Welcome to This Explainer. You know, as humans, we've spent centuries trying to build these neat, logical little boxes to categorize the laws of physics, chemistry, and biology. We just naturally expect things to make sense, right? But the truth? Nature's reality is wonderfully, completely indifferent to our expectations. Today, we're going to look at the creatures that absolutely break all the rules. Okay, let's dive right into this. I've got a question for you. What do cubic poop, an immortal frog, and literally Saturn's rings have in common? Sounds like a riddle, but the answer is that they're all tied to biology's most counterintuitive masterpieces. We're going on a fast-paced journey through the animal kingdom's bizarre realities, exploring survival strategies that, honestly, sound a lot more like science fiction than science fact. Section 1. Nature's Architectural Anomalies, tearing up the anatomy textbook. Let's start off with the number 100. Did you know that every single night, the Australian bare-nosed wombat drops up to 100 perfectly six-sided cubic droppings? Yeah, you heard me right, cubes. While almost all animal waste in nature is cylindrical or spherical, the wombat produces biological dice. Now, for a long time, people used to joke that they just had square sphincters, but the reality of what's happening inside the animal is actually way more fascinating. Well, it all comes down to the 8% geometric mold. See, wombats have this incredibly slow digestion process that extracts every last drop of moisture from their food. So by the time the waste reaches the very last 8% of the wombat's intestinal tract, it is exceptionally dry. And in this specific zone, alternating stiff and elastic intestinal walls rhythmically squeeze the mass. Over hours of this slow pressure, that uneven distribution literally presses the waste into stackable cubes. But why? Well, wombats actually have pretty terrible eyesight, so they deliberately deposit these on top of elevated rocks and logs to scent mark their territory. Cubes won't roll away. It's a brilliant, highly specific structural adaptation. Moving on to a real head-scratcher, what's really interesting here is how the platypus basically stacks three completely absurd anatomical anomalies right on top of each other. First off, they are entirely stomachless. No stomach at all. Their esophagus connects directly to their intestines because somewhere along the line, their lineage just lost the genes for producing gastric acid. Second, they sweat milk. Because they lack nipples, the females secrete this powerful antibacterial milk directly through their skin pores for their babies to just lap up. And third, as scientists recently discovered, they have biofluorescent fur that glows a vibrant cyan blue under UV light. Honestly, it's no wonder that 18th century scientists literally tried to cut the first preserved specimen apart with shears, absolutely convinced it was just an elaborate taxidermy fake. Section 2. Deep Time and Death, defying the cosmic clock and the grave. Just consider the massive scale of this cosmic timeline for a second. 450 million years ago, the very first ancestors of modern sharks hit the water. Compare that to the rest of the landmarks here. Sharks were swimming in the oceans 60 million years before the very first trees ever evolved on land. They are hundreds of millions of years older than Saturn's iconic ice rings, and they even predate Polaris becoming our North Star by nearly 400 million years. Thanks to their highly efficient, lightweight cartilage skeletons and drag-reducing dermal denticles, sharks hit upon an evolutionary design so utterly perfect that time itself practically stood still for them. Now, while sharks are out there conquering deep time, the tiny Alaskan wood frog, it's basically conquering death itself through sheer chemical mastery. The absolute second frost hits the frog's skin, a biological alarm triggers its liver to flood its bloodstream with glucose and urea. This massive spike in solute concentration acts exactly like antifreeze. Water is then drawn out of the cells and freezes safely outside of them, which prevents those jagged little ice crystals from tearing the delicate cell membranes apart. Up to 60% of the frog freezes completely solid. And step 4? Its heart, its brainwaves, its breathing, they just completely stop. It enters a state of total suspended animation, living as a solid frogsicle for 7 months before spontaneously thawing out and reanimating in the spring. Just incredible. Section 3. Extreme Physics and Physiology, Rewriting the Rules of Power and Endurance. 8,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, just to put that into perspective, that is nearly as hot as the surface of our sun. You'd probably expect a temperature like that from a volcanic eruption or a massive lightning strike, right? But no, it's actually generated by a tiny 2-inch marine crustacean living right in a shallow coral reef, the pistol shrimp. So how exactly does a 2-inch shrimp summon the heat of a star? It's all about the mind-bending physics of cavitation. The shrimp's specialized snapper claw slams shut at an unbelievable 60 miles per hour. Then a plunger mechanism forces water out through a super narrow groove. This extreme velocity causes the water pressure to drop so rapidly that the water instantly boils, forming an ultra-low pressure vapor pocket. Finally, the surrounding water forces this bubble to violently collapse, and when it collapses, it creates a microflash of light, which scientists call sonuluminescence, and an ear-splitting 218 decibel acoustic shockwave. That shockwave instantly stuns or kills its prey without the shrimp ever even having to make physical contact. And hey, speaking of extreme physiology, this brilliantly illustrates another physics-defying trick. Let's pit the ultimate swimmer, the bottlenose dolphin, against the ultimate slowpoke, the three-toed sloth, in an underwater breath-holding contest. Who wins? Well, the highly evolved, streamlined dolphin maxes out around 15 minutes. But the clumsy sloth? A staggering 40 minutes. No way, right? But it's true. Because the sloth runs on this super low-calorie leaf diet and has the absolute slowest non-hibernating mammalian metabolism, it can trigger an extreme dive reflex underwater. Its heart rate drops to a mere fraction of its normal pace, and its muscles consume virtually zero oxygen. It outholds the dolphin by nearly half an hour simply by mastering life in the ultra-slow lane. Section 4. Bizarre evolutionary quirks, traps, tricks, and highly specific coincidences. This brings us to a really fascinating, if slightly tragic, quirk. The fatal cycle of the Jill, or the female domestic ferret. This is basically a biological hormonal trap. Unlike humans or dogs, ferrets are what we call induced ovulators. That means their bodies simply will not release eggs without the physical, mechanical stimulation of mating. So if a Jill goes into heat and she can't find a mate, her body doesn't just reset, it just keeps producing massive amounts of estrogen indefinitely. Over several weeks, all that elevated estrogen becomes incredibly toxic to her bone marrow, causing a fatal condition called aplastic anemia. Her own biological drive to reproduce literally becomes a death sentence if it's left unchecked. Now, how about a quick forensic mystery? Why in the world do koalas have human fingerprints? Seriously, if crime scene investigators found a print near a eucalyptus grove, they might actually be dusting a koala's handiwork. Under a scanning electron microscope, a koala's dermal ridges are virtually indistinguishable from a human's. Yet our evolutionary lineage is split over 70 million years ago, way before the dinosaurs even went extinct. And other marsupials like kangaroos don't have fingerprints at all. So how on earth is this possible? Well, the answer is something called convergent evolution. Basically, it's a biological phenomenon where two completely unrelated species end up independently developing the exact same physical traits just to solve the exact same environmental challenge. So the crucial takeaway here is that both our ancient primate ancestors and koalas desperately needed a way to safely grip thin, slippery branches while climbing high up in the trees. Nature gave them both the exact same biological tire tread, the loops, the whorls, and the arches of a fingerprint, to channel away moisture and increase friction. Two completely different biological paths resulting in the exact same perfect physical solution. Section 5. The indifference of evolution. Pragmatic, brutal, and brilliantly creative. The big takeaway here is that evolution does not operate with some grand blueprint. It's just a process of brutal, pragmatic testing. Not a single one of the incredible creatures we've looked at today was designed to be elegant or logical to the human mind. The wombat didn't consciously set out to make geometric cubes. Its intestines just found a weird way to keep scent marks from rolling off a rock. The wood frog didn't decide to turn into ice. It just pragmatically adapted to the brutal realities of an Arctic winter. And the platypus wasn't assembled from spare parts just to baffle scientists. It simply held on to an ancient toolkit of traits that worked perfectly for its environment. In the wild world of evolution, if a bizarre mutation helps an organism survive, it gets kept. It really is that simple. So, I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought. If nature's version of normal includes 8,000-degree underwater bubbles, literally immortal frogs, and mammals that sweat milk, what impossible adaptation is evolving right now that we haven't even discovered yet? The laws of nature are vast, they are incredibly flexible, and they are endlessly creative. They prove over and over again that biological truth is for sure far more fascinating than fiction.
Please like and subscribe.